Hey guys, and welcome back to another day of fantastic online math learning. Today we are going to look at Envision 6.2 that deals with percents, converting percents to decimals and fractions and vice versa and all over. And it's a lot of converting, but we're going to get through it and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So before we begin, I hope you guys are doing well. You're enjoying some time with family and you're still able to get outside and enjoy the nice weather. I know yesterday was a gorgeous day, and I know today's going to be more of the same. So hopefully when you're done with math, you can get outside and enjoy that nice weather. So before we begin today, I want you guys to go ahead and answer this quick question for me. All right, guys. So hopefully you know that a percent, the word percent means that it's out of 100. Okay, and we write it with that fancy percent sign. That looks a lot just like this. But a percent is something that's out of 100. Okay, whether that's written as a fraction or the percent. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to look at this first word problem. So each proportion of time Teddy spends on his homework is shown in the bar diagram. So here is the whole amount of time that Teddy spends on his homework. So the whole amount of time. He spends 30% of this whole amount of time reading, which is shown below here in this second bar diagram. 3/5 of his time doing math problems. Okay, so we see 3/5 of the time. And 10/100ths or 1/10 of his time doing research for science. So I'm going to underline these. So 30% reading, 3/5 math, and 10/100ths or 1/10 research for science. I'm really great at underlining, guys, which is shown down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert all of these to the other two forms. So we're going to start with this 30% reading. Now notice that this is what we could say a fraction or a percent of the entire whole. It's not 100% or it's not one whole. Okay? It is a fraction or a part of the entire whole. So we are going to work on this over here. We're going to start with the 30%. Now my recommendation with this is if you're given a percent and you have to convert them to both a fraction and a decimal, is to always start by converting your percent back to a fraction. Okay, it kind of goes kind of a cyclical or more linear way where you're always going to start with percent, go to fraction, then decimal, or decimal, then fraction, then percent. Fraction is that one that's kind of in the middle that you can go either way to percent or decimal, and you guys will kind of see that. So let's go ahead and start with converting our percent to a fraction. So recall that to write a percent as a fraction, your denominator is always going to be 100. And then you can simplify from there, but it's always going to start out as 100. And going from a fraction to decimal, it makes it really easy if you start out with 100. So we have 30%. We're going to make that out of 100 as a fraction. Okay, to do that, we write it over 100, and we're just going to write our percent number there. So 30% as a fraction is also 30 over 100. Now you could leave it in this form, that's fine, or you can simplify it using your calculator. So I've got my calculator here. I'm going to type in, I'm going to do my best to do it reverse here. So type in 30. Okay, I'm going to hit that ABC button that's up here. And then I'm going to type in 100. And notice I have 30 ABC 100. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And notice that it's going to completely simplify it down to 3 over 10. Okay? So if you want, you could take that, simplify it, and draw a little arrow down here, an equal sign, and the simplified fraction is 3 over 10. Now to go from this fraction to a decimal, once again, I always recommend using the one that's over 100. Makes it nice and easy. Okay, so we'll go right 30 over 100. Now, we're actually going to write the decimal exactly how we say it. So since this is 30 hundredths, we're going to write 30 hundredths. In order to do that, we start off with our 0 and our decimal point. After that, we're going to write this out to the hundredths place. Now recall that this is our ones place. We have our decimal. The tenths place is here. And then the hundredths place is next to it. So we're going to take our number and just go ahead and fill in behind the decimal. And so we get 30 hundredths. And this would be our decimal number. Now you could actually do the same thing with this since it's over 10. You could write this as 3/10, which would be equivalent. And all that is just dropping the 0 in the hundredths place. It wouldn't necessarily have a value. It wouldn't have a value there, so it's not necessary for you to keep it around. So you could write your decimal like this or like this. I'll show you when we kind of get to a more complicated fraction how you can use your calculator to go from a fraction to a decimal easier. All right, let's go ahead and look at this next one. We're going to convert the fraction to both a percent and a decimal. Let's start by converting it to a percent. So we have 3/5. We want to convert it to percent. Well, right now, as you recall, we know that the percent has to be out of 100. So we know our denominator is going to be 100, and just like you guys did yesterday, you're going to change your denominator to 100. Well, what multiplied by 5 will get you to 100? Following along, know that 5 times 20 gets you 100. You use your calculator to figure that out, as we talked about yesterday. And then 3 multiplied by 20, since you have to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number, would get you 60. We can now write this as a percent, which would be 60%. Now let's go ahead and do this and convert this fraction to a decimal. This is where we can break out our calculator and show what we got. Okay. So I'm going to clear my calculator from the last one. Follow along with me. We're going to go ahead and hit 3. And now we're, instead of hitting the ABC, we are actually going to hit the division button. So 3 divided by 5. When we do 3 divided by 5, you can go ahead and hit enter, and you will get 6/10. Okay. So we are going to write that decimal number below and get 6/10. So we have our percent and our decimal. Now let's take a decimal number and convert it to both fraction and percent. So as I talked about before, like with percent, you always want to go fraction then decimal. With decimal, you always want to go fraction and then percent. So we'll take our 10 hundredths, or 1/10, okay, and we're going to go ahead and write that as a fraction. And the great part about converting decimal to fraction is exactly how you say it is exactly how it's written. So this is 10 hundredths. So we would say 10. That's a funky 10. I guess that 0 put his arm around the 1. Anyway, so that we have a 10 over 10 over 100. And that's all we got to write. Now you could simplify it if you know, or if you type it into your calculator, and we would get 1/10. If you're not quite certain how to do that, remember, you can just type in 1 ABC up here, and then 10, and hit enter. Oh, I'm sorry, I did 1/10. I meant sorry. Let's do 10 ABC 100, and then hit enter, and it'll simplify it down to 1/10. Sorry guys, I had the solution in my head. So now let's go from the fraction, okay, over 100 to a percent. So we're going to use the 1 over 100 because, well, a percent is out of 100. So that's what we want to use. So 10 hundredths, convert that to a percent, and we just get 10%. Okay. Let's move on to a few more examples. So if Anna spends 45 hundredths of her homework time reading, what is 45 hundredths as a percent? I want you guys to go ahead and take a moment and see if you can figure out this one. Alright guys, in order to do this, I'll walk you through it. So we want to make it a percent. In order to do that, we first have to change this to a fraction. So 45 hundredths, we're going to write it exactly how it says. So 45 over 100. And then to write that as a percent, since it's out of 100 already, we're just going to take that numerator, 45, and put the percent symbol. Just like that. Okay, so 45 hundredths as a percent is 45%. Let's keep on going. So we have Teddy's friend, Jacob, spends 5/8 of his homework time doing math problems. Write 5/8 as a decimal and a percent. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys try to tackle this one and tell me what you think 5/8 is as a decimal and a percent. Alright guys, we'll walk through this together. So 5/8, you can break out your handy dandy calculator to make this a decimal. Okay, so I'll show you. So 5/8, we're going to type in 5, and we're going to hit the division symbol, and then we're going to hit 8. So 5 over 8, and then we are going to hit enter, and you should get 0 and 625 thousandths. And that's 5/8 as a decimal. Now let's take a look at as a percent. This one might have been a little bit tricky for you guys. So this time let's go ahead and start with our decimal. Since 8 isn't a great number that goes into 100, you can do it, but it's not the best number that goes into 100. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we're going to have 5 over 8 and set that equal to 100, because that's how we're going to make our percent. Now we got to figure out what times 8 gets us 100. It's not going to be a whole number in this instance, so this is where you need your calculator. Go ahead and type in 100. Go ahead and hit divided by 8 and hit enter. And when you do that, you will get 12 and a half. And that is what you would multiply both 8 and 5 by. A little trickier. And when you do that, you get 62 and 5/10 out of 100, the decimal there, which gets you 62.5%. Let's keep on going. I got a couple more examples for you. I want you guys to write 58% in 2 equivalent forms as a decimal and a fraction. Go ahead and give that one a try. So in order to do this one, we'll start as a fraction. So 58% as a fraction would be over 100. So we have 58 over 100. You could simplify that, not necessary. So there's our fraction. And then we're going to make it a decimal. Since it's over 100, we're going to write exactly how we would say it, 58 hundredths. And we get our decimal form. Alright, a couple more guys. We're going to go through them quickly. So write 72 hundredths in 2 equivalent forms as a fraction and a percent. Go ahead and try this one on your own, guys. Alright, and to do this one, so we're going to go as a fraction and a percent. We're going to convert our decimal to a fraction, 72 hundredths. We're going to write exactly how we say it, 72 over 100. And then to write the percent, we would just take the numerator out of 100 and write the percent.